Excuse me, is your mic, is it right? There we
There
go.
we go.
Thank you.
As I was going to say, as Joe mentioned, our firm and myself and Brad have had a great opportunity to be a part of this county for many, many years doing work. And so we just appreciate the opportunity here to complete the county square with, I think, what you're going to see is a great design that ties everything together. So thank you for that. When we started the courthouse project 4 or 5 years ago, one of the first sketches we did as a team for that project was to think about not just the courthouse, but how the county square would work in collaboration with the courts and the administration building. Today, we're going to talk through an overview holistically of the work that's been completed to date. We're going to talk about some of the site concept, the concept design, and then we'll at the tail end talk about costs.
Let me ask you this. Is there a recommendation that you anticipate from the Committee of the Whole today?
Mr. Chairman, there is we will be sharing this same presentation and conversation with City Council on May the 17th. So Michael and I'll probably switch chairs at the city. But ultimately, our hope is if the Board of County Commissioners and City Council are on the same page with the solution and the shared cost model, that we would then, each of us, bring formal action to the board
The answer
to follow
today is
up.
no.
Not, well, we're looking for a nod, but no firm direction.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So during about 1.5 years ago, there was a master plan that was completed through some town hall activities and engagement through the public. And in that, the idea here was to enhance the county square area to incorporate pockets of space that could be utilized by a multitude of different functions. One of those was a multi-use stage. And there was other items as well, and I'll share those in a minute. But this is the overall master plan that was completed at that time. In that same conversation, we talked through as a team, what does that do for some of the activities that you may have moving forward, whether that's Old Settlers Days or other activities. So we thought through both how can carnival rides interact with the space. How do we include maybe food trucks and tents for First Fridays or for other events that may occur? Those types of things were thought through and incorporated as part of this master plan. The activity zones that we really spent some time thinking through, and I think if you go back and look at some of the items that were brought forth from the public, you'll notice that these were highlights within that engagement. Whether that's a component like item number 5 that talks about the history and education of the county square, and the courthouse, and those folks that are very, very prominent of why Olathe is today, to item number 7, which is an area for kids and parents to come and play and be a part of the square in a multitude of different ways. Or just like item number 4, which could be a tree grove with seating that you could bring your lunch to, or have a conversation with family or friends. So all of those things were thought about and planned out as part of the activity zones within this space. So through that and through our now, the last 4 or 5 months that our team's been working with both the city and the county, we've spent the time to look at holistically what does a multi-use stage look like and what does it plan to be in this type of setting. And so in that, although all the spaces and activity zones have stayed within the square itself, we may have rearranged a few of them. And Brad's going to talk here in a little bit about what that means and what we've done to get there. But you can see that we've looked at a multitude of different ideas and thoughts. So Brad, would you walk us through the design today?
Sure.
Sir, can you check if it's, and pull that closer to you, please? Thank you.
Is that okay? Next slide, please. Okay, so as Jeff mentioned, we spent some time, we looked at a lot of different concepts for the stage and, or the multi-use structure and how the site laid out and where all the activity zones were on the site. In the design process for the stage, we were looking at the siting of it. We also went and we did case studies, research on other facilities in other cities that we used to inform how we designed the stage. One of the things that we noticed in a lot of those is that the stage structure was something that got put off to the side when there wasn't an event happening. Sure, I can pull this closer too. Is that better? When there wasn't an event happening at the stage, it ended up being a something that didn't get used other than for planned events. And so we challenged ourselves to how can we think of this structure different? How can we think of it as something that's central to the square, that's maybe something that is used every day or both formally and also for informal sort of gathering places. So with that in mind, we set out to design the stage, and so we kind of moved it around. We looked at a lot of different options. We the concept that we have moved forward with, we located it at the confluence of the major pedestrian circulation zones on the site. And that, if you'll see on the diagram on the left, the main pedestrian circulation kind of flows around this, and then that lets us, the siting also lets us move the stage platform down so that it's level with the adjoining sidewalks, and it removes any physical barriers to circulating and kind of flowing out onto the stage. So this location formally also, in the diagram on the right, you'll see that it opens up the stage to that northern tree grove, and then also the stage on the south opens up to the lawn. So that creates a stage structure that has sort of 180-degree visibility to it, or a two-sided stage. And what we imagined happening is that you can have tree grove performances that would be like maybe a small quartet or something during a lunch crowd, or maybe an evening dinner event that's smaller, maybe a little less, more informal, and folks can sit out at the picnic tables under the tree grove. And then your larger events, say, Lone Star coming to Old Settlers Day, for example, can happen out on the lawn where you have seating capacity for larger events. Next slide. So the other thing in designing this is we wanted to look at the materiality and select materials that are complementary to the context and to the existing built environment, so the structure fits in. And so, glass, and you'll see more about that in a little bit, and then some metal that matches, actually matches the trim on the city hall and some of the metal on the courthouse and the jail facilities. So, also there we're using a rubberized play surface for safety at the playground. That design hasn't been finalized. This slide just talks about some more specifics of the material systems that we're using. A glass rain screen to create kind of the base element, and then the metal roof structure that complements. Next slide, please. So formally, we let the pedestrian circulation around the structure start to shape and inform the formal expression of the structure. And in this view, you see kind kind of on the left is that main arcing sidewalk where during a large event like Old Settlers Day, for example, you can have vendors set up. It gives them kind of a nice platform on the periphery of the lawn to have those sort of components, and then the lawn sort of gently slopes down to the stage to provide stadium seating, and then the glass pavilion structure with a roof that covers the stage. So next slide, please. This view, you're standing about on Cherry Street, looking back at the structure. The tree grove is to the right, the lawn is to the left. And so one of the things we envisioned happening here is those sort of lunchtime informal events. Imagine somebody can, get their lunch from the restaurant across the street, maybe come over and watch an event or watch a performance here. Next slide.
One of the things I want to mention here as it relates to the design of this element and this view, you get two opportunities to look at this, the context here, and Brad's talked a little bit about it previously about the central booking and the courts. And one of the pieces as we thought about the design of this facility or this stage space is making sure that it fits within the context, right? Whether that's through the materiality of it, whether that's through finding a way from a scale perspective to make sure that it fits within the square itself. So it's not just a large stage that's out there, but it's integrated and engaged within that courtyard space. So I think that the item I want to share here is, although some of the other images we're going to show you shortly about what this can look like at night, is the idea that this can be its own beacon within the community and within the area, but it ties really, really well, both from a material standpoint and a scale perspective, with the buildings that are around. Yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Looking at this view, it looks like it's a bowl, and just from a practical aspect, how are you dealing with drainage?
A good question. So part of what you see here is that the roof line slopes backwards towards the glass element. So all water that would be on the roof itself will move in that direction, and we will design a gutter system that allows for that to happen.
I can see that, but I meant the lawn looks like
Yes.
creating a natural
Yep.
ponding area.
I'm glad you clarified. So on the lawn itself, part of what this project will incorporate is some regrading of that space. Although we had designed, when we did the courtyard or the square space originally, we had designed it, there is a drain, it goes to that direction. There will be a little bit of rework there to make sure that that water drains directly to that, or the water drains to the drain itself. So I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay, so you have a drain there that's going out. Okay, got it.
And you'll actually see it raise up a tad bit when we go to design that so that it's not a big bowl. Part of that's for the design of seating and what have you. We want to make sure that there's seating that actually works for folks around the area.
Right. I noticed that, and I thought that was very clever. It's just ponding.
Good question.
There is a significant area drain there now.
Okay,
So it'll
thank
be
you.
a little bit of rework to align perfectly with this.
Soften it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So Jeff kind of mentioned the idea of this being a beacon in the public square. This is a view at dusk, standing on the sort of main circulation paths. And so a couple of things here that we created this enclosure at the back of the stage to house storage for AV equipment, and then an AV and electrical closet for connections for AV stuff during events. But then we clad that in this sort of frosted backlit glass that can start to act as a lantern in the space, and so we're imagining both for a performance that backdrop can be lit. It could be multicolored and with changing lights for a large performance, or, maybe holidays or special community things. But also just viewing the county square from Santa Fe or Kansas Street, this starts to become an element that activates the space and lets people know that, hey, maybe this is someplace that I want to go and spend an evening. And that will also start to provide a little bit of a nightlife for the stores that may be across on Cherry Street. The other thing we're imagining with the backlit is we talked about at Katrina and the county team mentioned an opportunity to provide a venue that can support and start to incorporate the school for the deaf that's down the street. And so we were looking at, she challenged us during the design process, like, how do we make this something that is supportive of the school? And we were imagining that the glowing backdrop can be lit, and the light show component of that can help reinforce the music or whatever performance is happening on the stage for people that can't hear that. So the other thing that we've incorporated into the design is some infrastructure to allow us to support other components that would help people that don't have the ability to hear a performance, to feel the performance and visually see it. So
On the Joco, will that change colors, or is that set on those colors?
the lettering on
Uh-huh.
Joco, I would say that is a component of the design that is not set.
Okay, because I've seen, some signs across town, you can change colors of them all the time.
Yeah, the Joco is an element within the what we're calling the art playground, or the art playground, and we will go through a series of design studies during the design, or as we finish the documents, to figure out exactly what that component is.
Mr. Clark, can you climb on the JO? Can you climb on that, or is it?
Yes.
So I thought so. I thought what it wasn't is going to be.
Yeah, the concept is that
Yeah.
it would be a play
Play
structure.
area. Cool.
And kids can climb on it, and then that's seated in a rubberized play surface.
So from the practical aspect, were any of these costs included in the original courthouse estimates?
No.
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 This is all new expenditures?
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't we hold our questions until the end, and so continue. Or are we there?
We're almost there. The next to last slide here. The other component here, significant area within the county square area is the Memorial Plaza. And this is envisioned as a place where we can gather components from around the county, such as cornerstones from the old courthouse, and locate them centrally in this kind of garden setting for people to come and stroll through there and see the history of Johnson County and Olathe. And so the other component here that you see is some plaques to memorialize some of the history of this site in Johnson County and Olathe. And we have not completed this phase of the design yet, but we intend to work with the Johnson County Museum to program that and incorporate some electronic tie-ins so that people can scan like a QR code on a memorial and understand, maybe see historic photos or a story about where that came from in Johnson County, and start to make a digital experience here that's also quiet and reflective.
Brad, if I could jump in on that, on that Memorial Plaza. Just this morning, Commissioners, you saw the video of the opening of the time capsule from the old courthouse. There are a number of monuments on the property today. That's a lot of what Brad's talking about. There's an old settlers monument. There's a cornerstone from the prior, the first generation Sirius courthouse. There's a number of things out on the property through the square today. We would like to pull those together in this Memorial Plaza and tell the story, as Brad said, of this square from a county use and from a community use, because it is very intriguing, very interesting place. This is also potentially the best place for the time capsule that we are talking about for the new courthouse, that if it were placed here, we would never lose track of it and not find it until we were tearing the building down again in the future. So just a thought.
You'll tell us about that day, won't you, Joe?
Okay, all right, continue, please.
Joe, you want to touch base here on the cost?
Yes. So then I get to talk about the less fun parts. You can see here the estimated cost for the build-out. This is the final phase then of the development of the county square. This is consistent with the original estimate from several years ago, well, more than several, I guess now. It is envisioned to be shared equally with the city. That's our proposal. So it'll be about $1 million each to go towards this effort. It will take us roughly, we'd like to get the bids done, jump into design, get the bids done, and start the work as soon as Old Settlers is complete in the fall, in September. And then with an objective of being open then in May of next year before the first Friday event. There are a number of different pieces to work through on this. This is a real partnership between city and county here. Our objective is for the city to, they are highly excited and feel a great opportunity to activate this space. This is the kind of ultimate outcome that has been envisioned for many years in the redevelopment of the downtown area. So the city is willing, interested, and excited, I think, about management. But this is county property as well, so the county will be responsible for significant components of the maintenance. So we are developing an agreement that includes the maintenance and the management and of the space with the city. When, hopefully, if you all agree, we'll be bringing an action forward. It will include the workup of that agreement, maintenance and management agreement. In the meantime, there are a few other things that we also will need. Essentially the rules of the square, the use of the square. This is something that we need to kind of codify for general public use, as well as special events, that kind of activation that we're talking about. But before that, hopefully, would be for agenda review next week, would be an action, a little more benign action than those other two, that are around the common consumption area that the city established over a number of blocks in the downtown area, and we're wanting to bring that to the BOCC here in the next 2 weeks for your consideration, so we can be included in that zone. Not for sale of common consumption, but for people if beverages are sold on the streets or in neighboring businesses within this zone that people can openly carry or possess on our grounds as well as those of the city and other common areas. So those are the three somewhat associated pieces with this piece of property and as well as with this recommended solution. Michael Wilkes is here, as I said earlier, and I asked him if he would say a few words as we get here to the end of the presentation. So, Michael? Yes, please.
Welcome, Mr. Manager.
It looks like it's on. Is that good? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Commission. Happy to be here. I think as I was thinking and listening to these guys talk, we have a long history. Well, first of all, I got to say this. My first thought as these guys were talking about was Mike Copeland would have loved to have been here today. And that's really what I thought about. And he would be the guy talking instead of me, and he'd get up here and say, "Thank you, we're happy to be in the capital of Johnson County." So I had to say that. But, we have a long history of partnering between Olathe and Johnson County. And, quite frankly, this whole project of the courthouse and the square is probably the biggest thing that we have done together jointly, and it has truly been a partnership. And I want to thank Joe and leading this effort, Penny and her staff, and all of the staff from the county in their willingness to partner with us and see this really for what we see it as well. It's not just a county square that's going to be used by all of Johnson County, hopefully, but it really is the heart of downtown Olathe, and that is very, very important to us. So we appreciate very much the recognition, and Trainer the same way, and the recognition on this whole project of that as a very, very important piece for us. It is really centralized to the revitalization of our downtown. We just had a retreat. I know you guys are familiar with that. We just had a retreat with our city council about 2 weekends ago, and one of their main 5 priorities for the next couple of years is the continued revitalization in downtown. And as you guys know, we've invested really literally millions of dollars into our downtown. We're really excited about the apartment complex that's coming up. It's already open. They're about 25% leased right now, well above where they anticipated being at this point in time. So they're excited, they're bullish on our downtown. I was just telling Joe a few minutes ago, we just got into a set of plans into the office last week for a 17,000 square foot 2-story office building that'll be built on Kansas Avenue right across the street from the courthouse. We're excited about that, which we think in turn will activate and give us an opportunity to bring in that long anticipated and everybody wants another restaurant in downtown right there at the corner of Kansas and Santa Fe. And this then becomes integral to that whole part. One of the things the council talked about during that retreat was the ability to bring in live music, live entertainment, live events. We started that several years ago with our 4th Fridays. It's been very, very successful. We believe this will just take it to a new level, and our ability to bring in bigger acts, bigger names, and really activate this. We've got places that Trainer has put in for food trucks, which we also did last year, kind of a trial run on food trucks, had a lot of response to that, bringing them back this year. So again, I could talk on and on about it, but we see this really as an integral part of the revitalization in our downtown, and that's exactly why we are interested and willing as a partner to contribute financially to this to make it successful, and also not only that, but to take our part in managing the responsibility to make sure that it is activated. And so that's a role that we're going to play. So other than that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have at the appropriate time.
Anything else, Joe?
No, sir, just stand
All right.
for questions.
Well, I do have one question. What's the conversation about the splitting of the cost?
The split of the cost is 50-50 of the $2 million investment. We see that sources there are the reserves or the ARPA funds, potentially, we feel like qualifies for that as well as that plan for the county's use of the ARPA dollars gets finalized.
So the cost will be the county's obligation?
Yes, 1 million of the two. The city would put 1 million towards the
Okay,
two.
all right, thank you. All right, Ms. Hanslick.
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions. First one is about the funding. If there's been any discussion or explanation of getting some private funding, like businesses in Olathe who would benefit and their employees might benefit from this, that might participate in helping to fund it, or as the Rotary clubs did, collecting money to fund parts of it. Has there been any discussion about that?
We have had a discussion around that, thinking that there are a couple of great opportunities. This is not an exhaustive sound system that's going in and performance system. It's adequate, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the budget side, but the performer's going to need to bring in their own equipment. That makes it a little more complicated, a little more costly to put on events. If we can get donations to help support higher end, higher capacity equipment for performances, that would help the cause a great deal. There are number of public art opportunities here as well. So if some of the interest that has been expressed in the past, perhaps towards monuments of any number of varieties, we have a couple of places on site. You would note in one of the early slides there at the intersection. I don't know, Jeff, if you could go back to that. There are opportunities, both the JOCO letters there near the playground is an art opportunity to try to make something special happen there, or there is certainly an opportunity for a more iconic sculptural element at the intersection. Number eight. At number eight. So there's a number of opportunities there that could help enhance this.
Okay, I appreciate that. Just two other questions. I'll just ask them, and you can respond as you see fit. But first of all, a couple of years ago, many of us on this commission appointed people to the initial task force that created this design, and I'm a little uncomfortable changing that design because they had done so much work on that. And I'm not an architect, so I can't speak to the specifics, but I do believe there were architects and engineers on that task force. So I'm just concerned about being respectful of the work that task force did, as well as the public input that shaped that original plan. So I don't know if you can speak to that. And then secondly, is there any chance that platform could be solar powered?
Let me try to answer some of those questions, Joe, and then I'll let you circle back. Number one, Trainer HL was part of that process when we went through that master plan. The idea here was not to change the master plan and the public engagement, okay? So what we've tried to do here is enhance and move the needle forward to find the right location for the multi-use stage. And I think what we've come to grips with or really looked at and created is a place for the stage that makes a lot more sense from the standpoint of the square itself and how it's going to be utilized, and then actually opens itself up to the other spaces within it. So I think that still is within the realm of that master plan, because the master plan was about providing a stage or a location where activities could occur. And I think that when you look at some of the things we talked about, if you've ever been to Chicago, which most of you probably have, and you go and see the large amphitheater that's there, how that actually functions and works. I'm not saying that's going to happen here from that perspective from a large scale, but the idea of having that as a central location with the ability to have all kinds of seating, standing, and what have you, back beyond that. And I think that makes a lot more sense and visually starts to work a lot better than having it off to the side that would really hinder some of that activity and what have you. So I don't think I don't think it's changing drastically the dynamic of the master plan. The other elements are all staying within the master plan itself. It might get reorganized a little bit from the standpoint of the cities of Johnson County. We've moved those to the area where the education is. So item number 9 on that master plan item you have in front of you is closer now to the history element. And we thought that made a lot more sense because it stays in tune with the engagement of the public, but it starts to actually engage a little bit better with the history and education of Olathe and Johnson County. So that was part of that. Other than that, everything else has remained as is per that master plan. It also, I think, when I think about the stage itself and the ability to engage the play area, to engage some of the other spaces from the tree grove and those things, I think that to us made a lot of sense in the team. So this isn't about just us deciding here. We actually worked collaboratively with both the county and the city to come up with a solution that I think really starts to stay with the master plan itself, but enhance it and engage it a little bit differently.
And what about the solar option on?
So the solar option, thank you for reminding me. I went down the other road and I didn't get there. The solar option I'll share with you is let us look at that. I think that has some potential, and I think that has some real good idea. Something that we hadn't thought of at this point, and something we can incorporate and try to engage and see how we get that there. It's a great idea.
You.
If I could add one other thing to it, Jeff, you were responding to some of the larger things that were modified, really the location of the stage. But I did want to just point out that area number 4 added an additional tree grove area and seating on the Park and Cherry, sort of an intersection there. That is something that we've observed since the space is built out the way that it is today. It's pretty clear that there's a desire to have seating throughout the square, not all down at the north end. So that's a modification or an addition to the design.
What is the concept behind number 9? It says Johnson County cities.
So that'll be either concrete or stone items that'll be inlaid within the site that'll have their names on them. And we can talk about what that looks like design-wise, whether that's when they were actually incorporated within the county. We can do a lot of different things there as it relates to how we put the text within that space. But the idea is those are stone or concrete items that bleed off of that walk space. So as you walk by, you're able to see each one of those in its own separate square or rectangle.
Thank you. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. O'Hara.
I have, what about parking? So, Michael, you were talking about, having events. Are you visualizing the parking that's behind the city hall? And then perhaps in the courthouse parking, because if you're talking about these types of events, there's going to be a lot of outside people coming in.
Right.
Have we considered that?
Well, I would say, thanks for the question. It's going to be obviously dependent on the type of event you're going to have and the parking, but I think it's going to be perfectly honest, it's going to be very similar to what happens at Old Settlers. People are going to park. We have parking spaces available.
Chaos.
And depending on what the event is, well, I think we're positioned better today than we were 2 years ago pre-COVID. So even for Old Settlers, because we now have, I can't remember how many you guys have, 200 and something spaces that you guys
Courthouse.
have. We have a lot next to the post office fixing to come back online now that the development of that apartment complex is finished, we'll be taking that back. So I think we're in decent position for parking. And again, I think, I talked to my council about this, right? So bear with me here for a second. But as a city manager, if I want to have a problem, give me a problem of parking at an event in my downtown. I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Right, because I'd rather have that than the alternative, which is
No one comes.
no problems because nobody's coming.
Okay, then my second question is there going to be significant regrading of the grass area?
No, we just have a little bit we need to do about where the stage is at and to make sure we get the proper drainage. But we do not plan to regrade that entire area. There will be areas because of the construction that will occur. There'll be areas that'll need to be redone at the end of the day. But at this point, we're not drastically changing the grading.
So do we have an irrigation sprinkler system there? So we're going to have to be very cognizant of that.
Yep. And we'll make sure, again, because we were part of that original component, we'll be able to look at those and make sure we reroute those as needed. Because that was, no matter which direction we would have went with the stage, I mean, wherever it was placed, we would have had to spend some time looking at that as well. And then also what you'll notice is there are some trees that are located in this area currently. And because of where they are from a mature standpoint, we'll be able to actually utilize those within the site itself. So when Joe mentioned the tree grove off to the left-hand side there on the site, we'll be able to take a look at that and see if those trees fit within that area as well.
Okay. Mr.
Thank you.
Ashcraft. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment on Commissioner Hanslick's question about the plan. A fair question, but it reminded me of the story of what Mike Tyson once said about going into the match with a plan. He said he has a plan till the first time he's slugged in the face. So I'm okay with the evolution of this. I've got any number of questions about how you've presented some things, but you're trying to develop it, and I'm supportive of that. The bottom line for me, and Joe Waters knows I'm going to ask this question, is, so what's the return on investment? You're going to have this facility. In some ways, it's modest. I mean, it's not an elaborate staging area, but it's still $1 million. And you've indicated that the county is going to assume maintenance and management of that. No? Or someone has to. So there's going to be a cost there. So will there be a revenue stream for renting out the space, or at least some of the time? And have you considered things like naming rights and underwriters? To go to Commissioner Hanslick's issue, I don't know if that's would be of interest to corporate America, but I just don't see anything related to ROI.
The couple of questions there, so I know Michael's going to help me answer some of this too.
Well, we can name it the Michael Wilkes Plaza if he'll cover that cost.
All it takes is the money, right? The naming rights is certainly something that we are open to, and I believe we are covering that in some of the language of those actions that the board would be taking up later on the use of the space and the overall management of the space and the maintenance. To your question of the county's piece, in generalities here, the county's piece will be the maintenance side, and the city's piece will be the management side, really.
Okay.
Simplistic terms here, the activation of the space. The county will still, it is a public square, it's not a park. So it is for specialized activities and general public use. So
no revenue stream.
I believe that there are revenue streams that Michael can speak to better than I, because they do this today.
Yeah, what I would say, Commissioner, is, again, you're talking about a space that's going to be used really, I mean, if you think about it from the whole bigger picture, this is really a quality of life enhancement for your community, for our community, for the county. And, I do definitely think, and we've talked about this a little bit, I do think there's an opportunity for naming rights. And to the extent that those naming rights could cover some of the operational costs associated with the stage specifically, I think that's wide open. There's certainly economic benefit from this. If you get 1,000 people that come to a concert or an event or something like that, they're spending money in the town, which also impacts the county's revenue sources. So there's certainly economic development, but in terms of, again, we just talked about parking. There's no pay parking as a revenue source. There's, things like that. And we don't necessarily, in the past, for Fourth Fridays and things like that, we haven't charged a ticket price to come to an event or something like that, and I don't anticipate doing that. But I certainly think there are things that we would explore. But I think the bigger thing is what it does to your economy, what it does to the quality of life for your community, and that's really what this space is about. Like Joe said, I mean, it's a public space, and honestly, I would suggest this is kind of a rebuilding of that space in Olathe because it vanished during urban renewal. And, the county brought that back a little bit between this building and your former building, but now we're bringing that back on a much grander scale for 500,000 people in this community to be able to enjoy and to be able to use as public space.
I understand the question about return on investment, but it's a great community asset that will benefit the community for decades to come. I think back in Overland Park in the late 70s, the Santa Fe Park, there at 80th and Santa Fe, and now it's been rejuvenated into the Thompson Park, changed a lot. I remember years ago when the city bought 300 acres on 175th and Antioch, called it an arboretum, and look at the public benefit that is accrued from that, or Shawnee Mission Park, or, so it is really, I think you need to stay in context that it is a great community asset that's going to be used by the community for various purposes. Mr. Myers?
Mine's very simple, but knowing my grandchildren, I would think about drainage covers, and because my grandkids would find a way to get hurt. And so that brought up my thought of how liability is handled with the city and the county in conjunction.
Okay, Ms. Allenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's about time, Mr. Waters. I have been after him. What a great way to partnership together and not only have redevelopment, but economic growth. I sit on the City Center of Lenexa planning, and we plan live, work, and play. And we had so much heat on that entire concept, then the economy tanked. And I often now would love to go back to all those people that said how terrible an idea that was. But just to visualize that outdoor space with the apartments, the buildings that are sitting here empty will then have life to them again. Then you've got the courthouse, and then across the street, you have the new chamber coming in, it's gonna create this downtown. And I know that I was probably a year old when urban renewal happened, but the devastation of the downtown area, my parents talked about it forever, of what happened to the downtown area. They used to go to, I think it was Miller's department store, and they said it ruined his business. There was no more downtown use of the space. So you might not see it's just a great partnership. You might not see the revenue up front, but you're gonna see the economic development around the area. And then eventually maybe we can then look at the parking garage across the street with some outdoor parks and stuff. I'd be more concerned about carnival rides than I would be covered. But I'm excited about it. I've been harping to Joe for how many months, ever since I came on board. I'll be more than willing to help go out and get funds. Even my family said, what can we do? Because that was, the sheriff's office was in there. And so I think there's great opportunity. There's opportunities with the cities of Johnson County to help. And I know that you guys are open to that. And I talked to several people that was on the original planning of this, and they felt like it didn't vary much. So I really appreciate all your work.
I would say this, you can report to the city commission that we're receptive to this concept and hope that we can move forward with it on a joint basis. Is there other information you need to know? Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, could we take a 5-minute break?
5 minutes,
Thank you.
we'll come back.
I'm on that.
Okay, second item on the Committee of the Whole, Johnson County Wastewater. Turn the microphone over to you, Susan.
Thank you, Chairman. Susan Pekarik with Wastewater, and just in case you haven't gotten enough wastewater this week, we'd like to spend another afternoon with you. So I just want to thank you all again so much for attending our Tomahawk event yesterday. I think it was a great event for our community, and we really appreciate your support of the board, support of County Manager's Office. It was terrific. The other great news, of course, Penny announced this morning in the meeting, the WIFIA loan. We were able to get that closed with the EPA on Monday, which was really exciting. And sitting here at the table with me, Tammy Lorenzen, our Assistant Chief Engineer for Integrated Planning, and Aaron Witt, our Chief Engineer, who are going to be doing the bulk of the presentation today. They also are your team, along with Patrick McQueen, who's sitting in the audience this afternoon. They really did all the heavy lifting to get the application together. Leslie Friedel from Budget did the heavy lifting to coordinate with our consultants at Baker Tilly and Gilmore Bell. So it definitely took a team to get a loan with EPA put to rest or closed up, but it's a great thing, and as Penny alluded to, there's a significant finance cost savings as part of that loan. So I want to thank all of you for your help. So this afternoon, and also with us, I'll introduce real quickly, we have our new O&M director, Jose Leon. He's sitting with us this afternoon in the audience. So this is his fourth day. So we're going to introduce him.
Public Works Director at Roland Park.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So good hire.
Yeah. So we're excited to have him. We thought we'd let him see how we go through our budget process here, since he's entering in the middle. So this afternoon, this is for your information only. Every year as part of our budget process, we present our capital improvement plan to the board, and then we'll be back in June to present the financial plan. Tammy will go into this. You notice our title also includes integrated plan. So we're going to utilize this time to update you on the progress of our integrated planning efforts as well, which is, of course, encompasses our capital plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tammy and Aaron, who will do the presentation for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for giving us this opportunity to come before you. Just the brief agenda of what we plan to cover today. First, as Susan said, I'll give you an update on the progress that we've made so far this year on the integrated plan. Then we'll also present our preliminary 2023 through 2027 capital improvement plan. And then we have a few major capital projects we'd like to provide updates to you on that, and then we'll briefly touch on next steps. So first, I know it's been, I think it's been almost 6 months since we've talked with you about integrated planning. So just wanted to give a refresher of why we chose to pursue the integrated plan approach. We recognize that there was a need to develop a comprehensive strategy of investment and prioritizing investments so that we could balance all of the community needs and affordability concerns as well. And we chose integrated planning so that we could capitalize on flexibilities that are already existing in the Clean Water Act for the scheduling of work. This allows us to prioritize our needs and not just follow the regulatory priorities so that we can then execute projects that have the most meaningful impact to our community. For this, we're in our second year of the program. And there are four main focus areas for this year. The first is program controls and management, project delivery and support, asset management programs. This is a continuing effort, and also regulatory planning and regulatory support. And I'll just kind of give a brief touch on each four of these categories as I go through. So one of the first things, through program controls, we established key performance indicators to help us manage and track how we're performing on the program. And one of the things that we did is develop schedule KPIs or schedule monitoring KPIs. And this helps us because we establish interim milestone schedules. So not just how is the overall project schedule going, but how are we doing at key milestones throughout the project? Because the sooner you know you have schedule concerns, the earlier you can address them, and usually your mitigation strategy is much less than a more major schedule. So this is the dashboard that we prepared so that we could present how we're performing. First, we have an overview showing us in general on projects which ones are on schedule and which ones have met a milestone schedule, and then which ones may have some delays. We can track also what that scheduled delay amount may be. And then we can also track what's the source or what's causing the schedule delay, so then we can best develop these mitigation strategies. And just an example, on this, it may be a little hard to see, but that tall purple bar, that's materials. So material delays, as you can imagine right now, are causing some delays on some of our projects. But there can be other causes, and there can actually be meaningful reasons why we have a delay. So one example would be we have a storage project in our Mill Creek service area, and we have been citing the location for that storage, and as part of that, we're working with the Parks Board. So we intentionally felt that we needed to put some additional time into the planning and siting of that storage facility to allow us to work with the board, present to them, get feedback, and then address their comments in our project before we move forward with coming to you for the next phase of funding. So we felt that, that's one of a delay, but it's a meaningful delay. So we also have organizational KPIs. So we develop dashboards for those as well, again, just to make it very easy to display this graphically. So one example, this is our system performance KPI dashboard. And this shows things like our compliance with our permit discharge limits, or how we're doing versus sewer overflows. Really gives us a very, very quick and succinct overview to see we're performing very well. And then there are some other KPIs we track as well through dashboards, including financial performance, growth, and some other metrics. So this has been very helpful to pull together. So, I talked about schedule of the program and how we want to make sure we're staying on target. And part of that is making sure we have enough staff to adequately meet the schedule for delivering these projects. And this exhibit shows kind of the historical CIP investment level that we used to have, and then what we're seeing for the next 25 years. And you can see there's a significant increase in output in the next 15 years. This was a key indicator to us that we really needed to dig in and look at our workload and our staff. And through that, we did a very detailed workload analysis. So one thing that we saw, this graph kind of shows the results of that detailed workload analysis that we did. The x-axis, or here along the bottom, this shows the years, the next 5 years. And then the y-axis shows the capital project workload expressed as full-time equivalent staff, or FTEs. The blue shaded portion here, that's our current staffing level. And the yellow is the gap between what's needed for staff and the current staff that we have. So the numbers on this blue line represent our shortfall in individual staff members to execute the capital plan according to our schedule. So we looked at this, and we are, this gray section represents that we have in our plan to add 2 additional staff, 1 in 2023 and 1 in 2024, to help address that. Because looking long-term, we recognized 2 additional staff is probably about right-sized for us. But we still needed to figure out how to address the shortfall in the early years. So we are utilizing program staff to supplement in this shortfall, the short-term shortfall, if you will.
Can you repeat that?
We're using program staff, so the team that's helping us with the integrated plan program, we are utilizing their staff to supplement our staff in this short term to make up this difference, this yellow piece of workload needs. And we'll continue to evaluate that workload need as we go forward to determine, again, if we're at the right size or if we need additional staff still. So one of the things you may be asking is, what are some of those tasks that we're having the supplemental staff assist with? And it's a variety of needs. We met with all of the engineering supervisors and talked with them about where are they seeing needs, how could we best continue to get our, basically the JCW oversight. We want to make sure that everything is done correctly, but where can we best utilize some assistance? And we came up with a number of different categories for where we're getting some assistance. They could be everything from field inspections, so we have been utilizing support for additional field inspections. They could be technical analyses. Some of our projects have more complex technical components, and we're utilizing some of the, basically leveraging the technical expertise that our program team has to review some of the more complex solutions being delivered to us. And then another one is some planning studies and project development, so helping to do some of the initial planning work through some of the, basically to help expedite some of the projects. Something else that they're doing for us includes basin planning and capacity enhancements. JCW has had hydraulic models of our collection system. These have been done basically to allow us to evaluate the capacity of our system, make sure where we may have capacity limitations, help us develop solutions. The way that we used to do this, without getting into too much technical detail, it was a very labor-intensive. Each person who was doing this work had to pull together groups of solutions and run iterations of them. It took a lot of manpower. There are new software tools that can do this in an algorithm. And so there are so many more different iterations that we can run than we would ever be able to financially pay a human being to do. And what we have found through this process is when we did this optimization of our Mill Creek and our Nelson Complex service areas, we've identified $190 million in cost savings by having this powerful tool. We also did the Leewood system as well and identified $28 million in cost. This is compared to the previous study that was done. And we're currently finishing the optimization of our Indian Creek and Tomahawk Creek service areas as well. So that's going on right now. And we should be getting results back later this summer as to what we can see for the optimized solutions on that as well. And then I talked about some of the facility planning. So we have some key projects coming up in the next 5 years and beyond that are going to need, we're going to need to acquire property for solutions. And that property acquisition, that can be a very time-intensive process. You know, you want to talk with the community, you want to get feedback from our city partners. And so we've been utilizing our program team to assist us with that effort in identifying some preliminary layouts, some initial cost estimating, utility coordination, preparing some of the preliminary development plan submittals, conducting public meetings, all of those things. So these are just some of the areas where we've been also utilizing the program team. And then I mentioned our asset management program. So this is something that has been really very important and cost-effective for JCW, because asset management is simply determining the right improvement action at the right time for the right cost. So that's really the whole key of asset management. And so just one example is we were able to work with our program team, and we developed our own algorithm to allow us to take all of this data that we've been collecting on our collection system, whether it could be the condition of it. We evaluate what's the consequence if we have a failure in that line, and what's the history of maybe deterioration or problems we've had. And we can use this tool, and it basically develops what's the next priority action that our crews need to do. Is it simply continuing to monitor? Is it doing maybe some more frequent cleaning? Or is it going in and doing some sort of a rehabilitation project? So this is just one example of how, when we have the right tools to be able to utilize all this data, just how powerful it can be. So another thing that we are doing as part of our integrated plan update is developing more public outreach and getting information from our stakeholders. This is a screen capture. It's not live yet, but we are close to going live with a new program website. We developed a new tagline to help kind of for the program to show some cohesion. So it's renewing life's essential resource. And what we're doing with this is going to be a place where all of the community, our customers, contractors, other people in the community can come and look at, get information not only about what is integrated planning, but also what are some of the things that we're doing through the program, how it might impact them. And we're also recognizing the construction, the atmosphere right now and the competitiveness of trying to get enough contractors, enough interest. We're developing a contractor bid page where we're going to have information about upcoming projects. We're going to have information about the various trades that are involved. And so hopefully the contractors will look at that and see us as maybe a preferred utility to do work with. So we're trying to basically, enhance our communication with the community. So one thing, I'm going to kind of transition from the integrated plan and an update into our 25-year rolling capital plan. So we do every year we do a high-level look at our 25-year program. And then I'll turn it over to Aaron, and he will do a more deep dive on our next 5 years. So from this 25-year schedule, this red bar at the top, we've broken this up into major facility improvements at the top. So you can see Tomahawk is still listed, but it's actually, starting with 2023, it will fall off the schedule. And so then we're showing the Nelson Complex. Mill Creek is the next planned facility improvement after that, and then in the future, Blue River. While we're doing these larger improvement projects, it's also important for us to continue reinvesting in our other facilities to make sure that they continue to operate properly. And so this next portion involves other just reinvestment projects in our collection system, and then also at our other treatment facilities and all of our pump stations as well. And then while we're doing that, we also are balancing capacity improvements in our system, addressing wet weather And this will allow us to eventually eliminate our 4 PEF facilities that we have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. That was a great overview of our long-term strategic planning process and that long-term look at our CIP. I'm going to dive into a few slides here, a little more detail over the next 5 years. This is our 23 to 27 5-year CIP, which sounds a little odd to me to say out to 27. But you can see our major categories on the left-hand side of the table. In the early portion of this 5-year, it does include projects that are already authorized by you, and we're starting construction on those or starting in on that project. It also includes planned projects based on our integrated plan and to meet our goals. You'll see the renewal and replacement category is our largest category. This does include the Nelson project as part of that line item. If you pulled Nelson out of the CIP, we would still have about $260 million in the CIP for those other categories. The majority of that is renewal and replacement for our other facilities, pump stations, and collection system. But the total of our 5-year is $742 million, and let's go to the next slide. Just wanted to touch on growth in our system. This figure represents our best projection of when sewers will be available in different portions of our service area in the next 20 years. We update this map every few years. Lately, we've been looking at it every year. But we're continuing to see the development occur. Last year in 2021, we had around 1,500 sewer connection permits sold. That was about a 15% increase over 2020. As far as plan reviews that we continue to see from the private developers coming in, we've been very busy with that. Last year was heavy with residential. This year, the first quarter, it's a little bit slower on the residential side, just slightly, but we've really seen an increase from the commercial submittals that we've been getting. Touch on a few just detailed projects that are shown on here. Cedar Mill 4 is at the top of, you're all right, go back. Cedar Mill 4 is at the upper portion. This is in Shawnee, near K7 and 43rd Street. This is a privately financed pump station that's currently under construction. It'll pump to our Cedar Mill pump station and onto our Mill Creek facility for treatment. The intent is they will finish construction this summer. During design, they've been coordinating with us, so it's built to our standards. After the testing, the intent we would come to you with an agreement. We would take over the ownership and maintenance of that facility going forward. Cedar Creek 4 is the area just east of New Century Air Center. You've been working with Aaron and Van Trust over the past few weeks, and that's underway. We will own and operate the sewers in that area, but ultimately treatment goes to Olathe for treatment from that area. Last one I'll mention is Blue River 28, Contract District 1. It's near 183rd and Flum, just northwest of that intersection. And we've had a lot of interest there in the contract district. We've sent out a petition last week, so we anticipate coming before you this summer, bringing that for consideration of enlargement to the system. Next slide, please. So I know it's off the 2023, but we wanted to celebrate it one more time and leave it in our CIP presentation. Thank you very much for your support over the years through design and construction of this facility, and it was a great celebration yesterday. And I heard we had over 150 in attendance for the celebration. So
Is that the Tammy Lorenz waterfall?
it is. It's part of that whole Disney attraction that's coming up.
It's got a location on the square out here.
Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean ride right on.
Right there it goes with your Disneyland.
I know.
You can next slide. Yeah, that's fine. So this is our Nelson Wastewater Treatment Facility project, but going off of the Disney discussion from this morning, Patrick McQueen, our business strategy director, mentioned that maybe this is the Magic Kingdom, is what this would be changed to.
It's not the Land of Oz. We tried that.
Okay. We'll note that.
Oh, boy, it's getting late today.
Yeah.
But obviously, this is an important project for us in renewal of this facility. And Penny covered it this morning in her report, but very excited about the WIPIA loan closing on Monday and getting in ahead of the recent interest rate increase. But we're going to be back to you in the next month to kind of give you an update on the status and where we're headed with that project. So anyway, looking forward to that opportunity. Next slide. This is our last slide as far as specific projects. This is our State Line Facility project, a very important project for us from the standpoint of we've been looking at when we finish up Tomahawk and are able to treat flows there. These facilities will intercept flow that's currently going to Kansas City, Missouri, and we'll pump that back to Tomahawk for treatment. And you can see the significant savings that we'll have on our operating budget in getting these pump stations going. We've been working a lot with the Leawood staff on the siding of these pump stations, and
How is it going? I mean, because there's a lot of resident concerns on this, and as Chairman said, please call Becky Kpis, so.
Post your cell number?
Yeah, so, I mean, are we able to resolve? I mean, people want this to be in Missouri, not in Kansas side. I love that one.
right, so those are some of the comments that we're getting. And we've had the interact meetings as far as the Leawood development process. But we took those concerns and we've put together another presentation. We're going to meet with the residents next Tuesday evening and have another presentation and
Are there
try to address those
concerns that actually can be made or met or not?
There
a
are
middle
things that
ground?
we can do to improve what that station is, but, you know,
It
we
can't be
need
put
the.
in Missouri. We know that one, which
Exactly,
they want.
Exactly. There are things, we need the pump station, and we'll be able to work through, you know, what the appearance of that station, landscaping, and those types of things. And we have a good presentation to be able to address concerns next week. And then just to wrap up, a few key points from today. The 5-year CIP that we showed balances our capacity improvements, system renewal, as well as having expansion and growth included there. As Tammy showed, we're executing our integrated plan, our long-term plan. In fact, I had some discussions with EPA earlier this week, and they were very impressed with everything that's going on in the county, and encouraged, they were very encouraged by the way that we've got this long-term plan and we're actually executing that. And then finally, we'll continue to look at how we can utilize available funding programs to be able to keep rates among the lowest in the region. Again, we had discussions with both KDHE and EPA this week to look at opportunities for funding and along with what the requirements are for those funding, so we can make sure we understand that and see what projects may be applicable to that funding source. So with that, we will be back in June to review our financial plan, and we'll stand for any questions.
Let me ask you, I've forgotten, what is your connection fee? You mentioned last year you had 1,500?
4,400?
4,400? So do the math for me.
Oh,
times-
1,500 connections.
Pardon?
1,500 service connections
At a
last
cost
year.
of
4,400.
4,400.
Okay.
Can you do a quick math?
I'll look at my business strategy director.
We project 8 million, the commercial connections are.
What was that? 8 million? 8 million was the projection. Connection fees.
It's based on meter size, so 4,400 is the base size at 5/8 meter. So as Patrick was saying, some of the commercial connections will be larger because they have a larger meter size. So 8 million.
Apple comes up with about 6.6 million, 7 million, something like that. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. O'Hara?
So $2.8 billion, and we have financed approximately $908 million as of now. And what was the interest rate on the balance of that $574 million? The WIFIA was 3.01. What was the other that just went directly out to market?
Well, we haven't gone to market for the.
Okay, so that
balance
one,
yet.
that was what I was thinking, that we had not. So that's probably going to be 4%. And it could be.
We're working with
so
budget now to get those offerings ready here later this year.
Okay, so it's going to be later this year.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're
Wanna
going to
try to
probably be
get ahead
looking
of
at some
interest rates.
significant increase in interest rates there. One comment I wanted to make, the expertise that the organization has acquired through Tomahawk, it's going to be very beneficial for your Nelson, and then you're building on that to go ahead and the third one was the Mill Creek.
Mill Creek, yes.
So it's my thought is that as we're going forward, we are gaining an amazing amount of expertise in reconstruction of these wastewater plants. I mean, this is a huge chunk, $2.8 billion, and who knows how much that's going to escalate. And so when you come back in June, I would like to understand how we're utilizing the $170 million in reserves. And I know that it's projected that we're going to have 30% fee increase by 2030, and your look back it may be higher because of the increased cost. And are you updating that? I guess is my question.
Absolutely. That's what we include as part of our financial plan. So we have a couple of performance indicators we use. I don't know if you recall, but the wastewater has two funds, an operating fund and a capital fund. And so we've got performance measures that we use to help us track the health of both of those funds. And we include that in our presentation to the board as part of our budget.
This is an amazing amount of improvements in our system in really a very short period of time. And I'm assuming that this is all driven by EPA requirements, is this our plan?
It's our plan. And Nelson, in the case of Nelson, it's the oldest facility in the system. So it's over 75 years old. So it needs to be renewed. It cannot meet future water quality requirements, so that's a component of it, but the main driver is the age of the asset.
Okay,
that need to
all
be
right,
replaced.
thank you.
I think it's appropriate to share some of the information that was presented yesterday. I didn't see a lot of coverage on the news last night, but the fact that staff, the contractor, and the consulting engineering companies were able to work with the EPA, and instead of building $200 million worth of underground storage facilities for wet weather, we were able to use some technology, new technology, and basically saved ratepayers in wastewater about $200 million a year. The other activity that I know you've been engaged in and will in the future was setting down, again, staff, the contractor, the consultants, looking at the project, evaluating aspects of the project, and coming up with a savings, again, of about $40 or $45 million over the expected price. And so that kind of diligence, that kind of innovation, and that kind of working together, I think needs to be emphasized with our ratepayers so they understand the full extent of the quality of work and the efficiencies that you work towards to deliver for this system. So I hope folks will remember that the total savings of Tomahawk Creek indicated yesterday was like $245 million over what the original projected cost was. That's enormous. That's significant. So thank you very, very much for that good work. Ms. Fast.
Yeah, I mean, I get these emails from Water One, and all their savings. I mean, do you ever put something in, my bill or an email or, I mean, because here you got my mailing address. Is there any sort of education that you do? I mean, to let people know?
No, that's a great point. I think, we have the Tomahawk website. We also have a Nelson website and then the integrated planning
But
website.
people don't go that. I
but
mean,
they don't.
next door would be helpful on there, but.
And I know Jody and her team promoted the project yesterday, so a lot of that information was put out on social media. And we can continue to do things like that. We do educational bill stuffers, I guess is what you call those, and we've utilized that in the past to remind folks not to put grease down your drain, who to call, if you have a backup and those kinds of things. So I appreciate that. We can work with PIO to do more of that.
I have like one more question. So, and I've talked to you about this, there's areas, a few blocks away from my house who have their own sewers. So we, have areas that, and the ARPA funds, I mean, you thought perhaps there'd be funding to help these people get online. Where do you see that at now? Because to me, that's part of the planning. I mean, that, you have the heart of Mission right next to Nelson. You have people on their own sewer systems.
I don't know if Aaron wants to respond to that. We had staff take a look at that, and we did include that as part of our project list for consideration. So Aaron, I don't know if you have anything to add, or?
Nothing to add other than continue to look at what are the opportunities there, including some of the funding that's available. And we did look at overall septic, overall the county, not just right next to Nelson.
Yeah, I know. I
it's
mean, I'm just
considerable.
using that example. There's pockets all over, and how we've got to address those pockets at some point.
It is considerable, and I think, looking at vulnerable populations, water quality impacts, those types of things need to be part of that, but it is substantial, the amount of septic that's in the county.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of follow-on points to this discussion because I think it's real good. You're in one of those unusual businesses that nobody cares about you except when it doesn't work. Okay, a friend of mine, former city engineer in Scottsdale, Arizona, used to say, we do the common things uncommonly well, and nobody realizes that. But the point that Commissioner Fast raised, I think, is critical because we do get, from time to time, conversation about costs, and as Commissioner O'Hare pointed out, and we've seen this for the last 10 years at least, and we're going to see it for another 10 years. It's an incremental increase, and over time, it adds up. And it's easy to focus on that because when you get the bill every month and it keeps going up, that's what you focus on. In terms of talking points and kind of a communication plan, having some kind of central resource tied to our website and we don't have to go overboard, but shows, and as the chair pointed out, and I actually was talking about this very topic on Tomahawk to a Rotary Club this morning, and they didn't realize, well, our rates are going up and they're unhappy about that, and I get that, but to show why the costs went up now, why we had banked resources because of the EPA and Kansas City and what we were facing if we didn't do that. And once they saw that, they got it. But when they get their bill, they just see, well, it went up for whatever reason. So I would encourage you to do that. And I think Commissioner Fast's point's very good. It's cumulative. There are any number of these that have occurred since I've been on the commission, and we had a couple today that add to that, and the Nelson's going to be a big deal. And one of the things I was talking about this morning, I said, well, but why don't you just charge the people who are hooked up to the Nelson system, and talking about the integration of the system and so forth. So it's an important message. It's a critical thing. It's a common thing, but we have to do it, and you do it uncommonly well.
I think to follow up on that, I don't know how many people remember the election that was held. I think it was back in the early 90s. when wastewater went away from a benefit district approach to a utility approach. And so the system that we have in place was approved by public vote back in the late 80s or early 90s. And I think refreshing memories of that might answer the question of why doesn't those who are served by,
Yeah.
the Nelson plant pay for it. Another question, and we talked about this before, and it's still an open question, and that's about financial audits of your facility. I understand that there are specific steps that are taken. Let's say use Tomahawk, for instance, by the consultant, the contractor, and wastewater staff to verify costs. Can you give us some explanation of that process?
Yeah, I'll walk through kind of the high level and hit the key points, and then if we have detailed questions, Tammy and Aaron are here to help me. So, yeah, let's take Tomahawk, for example. Nelson would be very similar. So, you know, we have our slide here of delivering a project, and there is a relationship between us as the owner, the county as the owner, and then the contractor. And it's a contractual relationship. And there are a set of documents, contract documents, that outline or provide the framework for that project, for the work, and for how the work will be delivered. Those contracts include things like front-end documents. The front-end documents include the conditions of the contract. So that includes things like the bonds and insurance requirements, of course, the contract price, the duration of the project, how payments, the payment procedures, so how retainage will be held and how it will be released, any scheduling requirements, associated documentation with that. And then behind those front ends, you have the specifications and the drawings, and those provide the details of the work, like the equipment, how the structure, so the concrete requirements, and then the drawings provide all of the dimensioning and where everything is placed. The front end documents, those are actually county documents, and then those are supplemented with specifics that are related to the project. So those documents get reviewed by not only wastewater staff, but by legal, by purchasing, by risk management for every project that we put out to bid. So then the contractor bids the work. Once they're selected, they provide cost-loaded schedules, so line item, what we typically call a schedule of values, as well as projected billings or pay applications that they anticipate through the project in terms of how much and when. Materials and equipment that are to be included as part of the work, those require submittals by the contractor, and the reason for that is they're obtaining these submittals from the vendor, the engineering consultant who has prepared those contract documents, review those submittals against the contract requirements to make sure that what the contractor intends to provide is going to meet the requirements of the project. And then once those materials and equipment arrive, they're either stored on site or they might be stored off site. In the case of Tomahawk, it was a very tight site, so they did store materials off site, so they're required to provide bonds and insurance for that. There is an engineering resident project representative, or RPR. In the case of Tomahawk, there were multiple RPRs, but the RPRs inspect what arrives. There's documentation. They inspect it against the project requirements. The RPR is on site inspecting the work. They're logging that work that's being completed by the contractor. Again, utilizing the contract specifications and shop drawings to verify that that work meets the requirements. All of that's leading up here to the pay application. So when the contractor submits their pay application monthly, typically it's monthly, They are submitting that. It shows the work that's been completed against the schedule of values. It is including not only the work, but also any stored materials. They have all the documentation to support what they are applying for in their pay application. The RPR, who's been in the field inspecting this work, reviews that pay application as part of the submittal. And then once the RPR has signed off on it, they're forwarding that to the engineering project managers, the engineering consultants, project managers, who then reviews that against the project requirements or the contract documents. Once the engineer has signed off on it, then they are actually sending Johnson County Wastewater the pay application with a letter of recommendation for payment. Our project manager, wastewater project manager, receives that, and then we have another graphic here. So they receive that, and then wastewater uses a system known as eBuilder. You might recall the board authorized or approved a contract for us to utilize the eBuilder software a few years ago. And so this is the eBuilder workflow, and I won't go through it in detail, but essentially it provides the workflow, it documents how the pay application moves through our process. Project manager reviews, it goes to the assistant chief engineer, to the chief engineer, and then myself for approval. Some more routine or smaller projects will go from the chief engineer directly to our accounting team. Once our JCW accounting team receives it, then we hand that off to the financial management department, and that it gets entered into Oracle, where then the pay application gets paid. And I know financial management also has their own set of protocols that they follow as well. That was a high level.
Oh, you've got about what, 4, maybe 5 opportunities that, or
There's probably
individuals
a dozen,
or
on the
groups?
Tomahawk, there's probably at least a dozen people or more that look at that pay application once the RPR receives it. So, yeah.
So they're all verifications of the financial, the accuracy of the financial, or of the vendors' billings that are paid, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Questions? Ms. O'Hara?
We all know that cyber fraud is our weakest point. And so that is the area that, it's just rampant. It's everywhere. And with these size of projects, people know about them, and they're very crafty. And so what kinds of safeguards are we putting in place to guard against that?
I would want, I don't know if DTI is in here, I would want to have our CIO speak to that.
Maybe we could do that in June. That's fine, but that is where these types of projects have vulnerability. So anyway, appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Other questions? All right, if not, does that conclude your report?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Well, Mr. Chairman, enjoy your tacos tonight.
Yeah. Sunshine this weekend.
And heat.